It's nice that they let everybody know now. And I'll just mention to people where we're live. So I guess we're going to be back in the positive degrees in a couple of days. Wednesday and Thursday, I'm looking at +9, +10.
That would be nice. I miss more than the temperature. I miss the light,
Yes.
coming earlier in the day. So just seeing that over the last week has been the most uplifting thing of anything.
Yeah, I find the same thing. Yeah. But when the warmer's weather, I get out more. Just like when it's -20, like it is, it's not. I'm not getting out. I'll just be honest. All right, I'm just finishing telling everybody we're live. All right, and I'll move that around. And up to that window. Control. All right. Welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us, Evelyn, and the people on YouTube. We're just about to get started. And if you have questions for Chris, put them in the chat room, either here in Zoom, put them in the QA window, put them in the chat window on YouTube, and I'll happily ask them as we go along. Oh yeah, I got a big long intro for you. Here we go. Welcome back to Startup Talk. I'm your host, the Startup Coach, founder of TorontoStarts, one of the largest startup communities in Canada. And with me today is the Executive Director of Innovation and Entrepreneurship at Schulich School of Business, Special Advisor, Office of the President, York University, a startup investor, advisor, serial entrepreneur, and so much more. Welcome, Chris Carter. How you doing?
I'm great, excited to be here and have the conversation with all of you today.
Yeah, I'm really excited to have you. There's so much I want to learn and today, so we might as well jump in it. I looked at your background and there's so much here. So let's try, if we can, to start at the beginning. At what point did you know you wanted to be an entrepreneur and run your own business? Did you get that, Chris? Or did I lose
Yeah,
you?
we just had a little glitch out there, so we're back.
Okay.
So in terms of when I wanted to be an entrepreneur, it's interesting. My desire to be an entrepreneur was fundamentally because I didn't want to leave Toronto, and I started off life as a journalist. And kind of the traditional path as a young journalist is to like head out to other parts of the country, and you kind of have to fight your way back into the city. At least at that time, it was like you had to fight your way back in. And I always had the mindset that I wanted to start out life in Toronto right from the beginning. And so I had this idea, like, what if I had my own magazine instead of going to work for someone else? Then I could create it and I could like be right here in the city that I love, where I want to stay and camp out and hang out. And I wouldn't have to go on one of these odysseys like all my classmates were doing to leave the city and then fight their way back. But I didn't know anything about business at that time. And in particular, one thing I knew right away was that I couldn't afford the price of paper. And as I researched around and was thinking about what to do, had this memory of a friend of mine at one of the community magazines where I was writing, and big 6'7" techie, amazing mind, genius, way ahead of his time. This is 1995, and he was always walking around the magazine saying, "Soon we'll have no paper, and all of this will be on the internet." So as I was sitting facing down this big print bill that I wasn't going to be able to pay for, not wanting to leave the city, wanting to create my own magazine, I thought, I got to find that guy and find out what this internet thing is all about. Because if we don't need paper, then I don't have to pay the bill and I can actually start the publication of my dreams.
Fabulous. And that's a great mind switch from uh, atoms to bytes, as it were, I guess. Taking that and, inventory, paper, those cost things you can change when you change the model. And then it sounds like early days, 1995. Can you tell us how that? I'm going to say blog because you didn't tell me what it was when you launched it, how it went.
Yeah. And I guess one thing to set the context for people in terms of like everyone who's like tuning in, listening today, to think about that time was when I went off to find my friend, the techie, to figure all this out. We had both gone our separate ways from this publication. And, this is 1995. So no Facebook, no LinkedIn. Very few of us even have email accounts, let alone mobile phones. And we just live where we live, and we have our phone number. And if we move around a lot at that time when we're young, our phone number might be changing from different places too. So my first big entrepreneurial act was to sit with the phone book for 4 days and call people with the last name Crawford. His name's Chancellor Crawford. And I called Crawford's for 4 days until I finally found his mom under the L's. And she said, the reason you can't find him in the phone book is because he lives with me and he doesn't have his own phone number. So imagine a world where everybody's like super hyper connected at a click now, to a world where this guy I'm looking for doesn't even have a phone number except that he's at his mom's, and that's the phone he uses. So I found him. He got on the phone with me. His mom put him on the phone, and we sat down that night. I went over to his house and he showed me the internet, and I asked him if he could make these things, and he said yes. And we went into business together that night. We made each other a promise. Neither one of us would ever take a dollar more than the other one out of the business. And he'll create the tech, and I'll go off and create all the editorial and find the advertisers. And it became a very successful, online publication, called like maybe a blog, but it had podcast elements to it. It had stats, all kinds of stuff in it. And it was a very kind of alternative take on the world of sports, not a traditional sports publication, very more subversive and looking at different, deeper business elements and social perspectives as to what was happening in sport at the time. Intellectual property rights, thinking ahead of what the players own versus the league, all these topics, and people started gravitating towards it. And eventually it became really quite popular, except the problem was back then we couldn't really track anything and tell people who was really coming to the site or answer any of the questions that an advertiser would want answered, right? Like I'd go to talk to like a bicycle shop and they'd say, are any of these people from Toronto? Like, do you really know who they are? All these hits that are coming in of people that are like allegedly reading this thing. And so what happened was we built something amazing, but we couldn't quite monetize it. We were way ahead of the curve. So I took it and I pitched the idea of selling it to the Fan 590, the sports radio website owned by Telemedia at the time. And they didn't have a website. And I walked in and said, I've got all the tools, all the layouts, everything already done. I can rebrand it for you in 48 hours and you could be online with your own site. And they're only 2 years into the endeavor. They bought the website from us, the blog from us, and turned it into the website for the Fan. And when I asked them for how much I wanted for it, they said, well, we can't pay you that. We can pay you half. But one thing I've always, decided in life is when someone can't quite pay me what I want, they should pay me something else instead. And so what we did was we said, okay, well, we can't get paid the whole price, but we'll take that much that you have in cash, and we'll take the balance of what we want in radio ads, because they had lots of those. And then we took the radio ads and then we launched our own web development company, doing what we had done for ourselves, but doing it for a broad range of businesses and organizations and nonprofits and politicians and all kinds of people all across the country. And we advertised it with all these radio ads that we'd got in part from selling the original publication. So those were the early days. And that led to another huge pivot in the business down the road. But that was the beginning of what happened with the publication that just lasted a couple of years, but became the foundation for what we built in the web company.
Yeah, it sounds like a great story. Back in the early days, people didn't have emails, people didn't have personal computers at home, was hardly a thing. So it interesting to go back in those days where everyone didn't have a cell phone and everyone didn't have a thousand different ways to get a hold of them, and then taking that technology and building something, selling it, and then saying, "Oh, I'm going to take what I've learned and build it for other people, and that's my job now." It seems like a very interesting startup story, and one we've heard where somebody launches something and finds that niche and figures out how to do that for other people. Can you tell us a couple of more companies that you started?
Yeah. So what happened along the way from there was the next iteration, and even if you think about like the story of like why we were able to have the idea to now start creating websites for other people, the thing is that all those advertisers that we went to talk to and said, "Do you want to advertise?" What they said to us was, "Not really. Don't want to advertise on your thing, but wow, I'd love my own magazine." I love my own. So this is, have to listen to what the market is telling you at the time. And so similarly, once we were building all these websites for people, then there was a point at time at which customer after customer kept coming in and asking the same question, which was, what do you have a recommendation on what you think is the best email marketing platform in the country? And so after the 10th, 11th, 12th, 17th customer of ours came in asking that question for our review, and as we were going out there and reviewing them, then we thought, well, this is crazy. We don't like any of them really that we've seen, and we think they're all dramatically overpriced in the market. Here's another thing people won't remember, but there was a time when the price to send an email through an email marketing platform was pegged against the price of a stamp. So it was 45 cents per email, right? If that had held, I'd be a much more wealthy man than I am right now. But it dropped pretty quickly in the email wars down to like a penny and then sub a penny. But it was 45 cents at one point. So when we were thinking like, well, there's got to be a better way to do it, then we took one of our developers and we put him in a room on the side. And now you would have like big complicated like wireframes and product roadmaps and everything. No, me and Chancellor just went took a room with a big whiteboard on the wall, and we drew with lines what an email marketing platform was and how everything would, like, here's what the report would look like, and it would go back to here, and it was just a giant picture on the wall. And then we told the developer to like start building it, and we'll come in and check on you every day. And so we were off doing the web business. And then there was this room where this new company was being created. And that eventually became the biggest, email marketing company in the country. And at its heyday, we were sending out billions of emails, and our client roster was about 300 major corporations, everyone from Shoppers Drug Mart to Air Canada and Aeroplan to the Bank of Montreal to CBC, TSN, and like kind of a golden client roster that people became interested in. And then eventually we had the opportunity to sell the company to a big public communications company that was interested in getting into the digital space. And that's what we did. Along the way, I started all kinds of other businesses. Some of them were like complete, like, crash and burn scenarios. Some of them that were like sort of successes that I took things away from, that I learned from. But all of them were interesting and part of my journey. So, we at one time we built an online media platform for a marketplace for buying and selling media advertising spots that media buyers could come in and buy. At one point, we launched what became the only nationally syndicated radio show in Canada on professional wrestling, believe it or not. And it was like a huge hit. And we wound up selling that. We produced like books that sold 20,000 copies per book. We were like flown by Fox down to Los Angeles to pitch a television version of the show. And that was fun. It didn't become a huge company, but we sold it successfully. And another time we launched a whole business that was just producing websites and e-commerce programs for sports celebrities. And we had Curtis Joseph, we had Roger Clemens when he was here with the Toronto Blue Jays. We had all kinds of different sports celebrities, and that was successful as well too. At a time where we were doing all that kind of experimentation, if you wanted to peg it into a particular era in the city's tech history, that was around the .com era when we were trying all these different things. When the .com collapse happened, it really forced us to kind of like refocus in on the core of what we were doing, which was in the email space. And that was a good decision to focus versus having all those other things going on. It was a little bit freer and wild during the .com era in terms of launching different things and experimenting. And they were all a ton of fun along the way. Yeah, so those are some of the different things. Since then, I have, after selling the business, then I've been more involved in supporting other entrepreneurs to launch their companies, as opposed to taking an operational lead and taking the presidency of anything and running it at that point. And I found other things that are a lot more fun and compelling in my life, like all my teaching activities and the work at Schulich, which involves launching companies but helping the students do it instead of myself.
As we mentioned at the beginning, you're executive director of the Office of Innovation and Entrepreneurship at the Schulich School of Business. Can you tell us about your work there?
That's a lot of fun. I get to do a couple of different things. One is that I get to work with all of the students and alumni founders and entrepreneurs. Now, a lot of the different universities and schools have done something which is super cool, and I definitely appreciate, which is creating these like accelerators that are open to a wider community base. And York University has that too. Y Space has been very successful in York region supporting entrepreneurs in that way. So for ourselves at Schulich, what I needed to look at was like, what's the unique opportunity for us with all of these accelerators already pre-existing? Because I only came in to start this about 5 years ago that the school asked me to work on it. And I also had to like look at the fact that we also have the whole York University offering. So what would Schulich's unique offering be? So I think something we've done that's a bit different compared to other universities and groups is that we've really focused on creating a platform that is exclusively for companies that are co-founded by a Schulich student or alumni. And what can we give them that's unique and is a unique advantage that they can also go work with other accelerators or incubators or do all kinds of things. But what can we provide them? So what we decided was that we would key on building community as the focus and leveraging the 40,000 odd active business alumni of the Schulich School of Business around the world. And when you think about that, pretty much any industry or company that you might want to commercialize with, or a particular type of strategic investor, or someone just who has deep industry insight who could help advise you on how to price better or position your product better for that particular industry or market. We have access to all of them because the 40,000 alumni are in all those positions all over the world, every market that you could imagine. So that has become like the real, magic element. And you can also, you can understand that an alumni is going to jump up to help a student from that school or another alumni, as opposed to if I just call them up about random startup companies, they'd be like, cool, but if there's an opportunity for them, but it's not going to be such like a situation where they're going to just lean in and help selflessly because of that connection with the school. So that's what we decided was like the most, the kind of the key center of what we were going to build. And that's quickly grown to the point where we now have 3,000 active alumni and students working together in that community. And then we have 250 companies that are either students or alumni. And the other thing we decided we would not, box it as being tech only, and we would not box it as being only available to people who are aspiring to be venture stream companies that are off attempting to build unicorn companies. We're equally inspired by the service businesses that support those scaling companies, by the founder who's interested in creating a business that they want to build and hold on to for the next 40 years, and they have no interest in just building it to sell it in the next 5 years. We're inspired by the founders who are creating food companies or restaurant chains, and they all come together and they all have something to contribute to each other and add to each other and help in that process. So that's kind of like big component number one, is the whole community and all the programming and all the network and support that goes around helping those companies and guide them to where they need to go. And I'm lucky that past summer, we added a Schulich entrepreneur in residence in Cherry Rose Tan, the founder of #RealTalk, the movement for founder and entrepreneur mental health in North America, and an accomplished investor and entrepreneur herself. And so that's the job I used to do. The previous year, I took 500 individual coaching sessions with Schulich entrepreneurs, both students and alumni, in addition to the rest of everything going on. So Cherry Rose has joined, and she's helping take care of the founders within the community. And then she and I will take like a portfolio approach where the ones that are going to now go and to a next level of raise or have deep opportunities of commercialization on the revenue side, if they're not pursuing venture, then I'll get involved with her and we'll like tackle the next stage of opportunity for the company. So it's kind of like category number one is taking care of them there. Then the dean also gave me the opportunity to be involved as the co-director of the entrepreneurial studies program on the academic side. So that involves recruiting and hiring the instructors, imagining what new courses are going to be. We've launched a whole series of placement-based courses. So the one that's become the most popular that we created is called the Mentorship Match. And the Mentorship Match takes a different approach with regards to work placements for innovators who want to go work with top founders or top venture capitalists, as opposed to going to a big firm and being in a position where you're going to be reporting to a mid-level manager, or you could, as a student, wind up reporting to just a more senior student or something like that. What we said was, like, I'll curate the 40 top MBA students in the Schulich program in second year for their final term, and I'll hand match them with founders or leading VCs in the city, and they'll work directly with that senior leader on a special assignment project. And then that will be the course. And then I guide and coach the student while they're working at the company or at the venture fund. And that has been groundbreaking, because it's also really dramatically shifted where many of our students, and often coming from underrepresented or underestimated groups of students as well too, are punching right through into very powerful venture firms and tech organizations by being placed in those relationships with those senior people. So that was the second piece, was re-architect and re-look at how would you as an entrepreneur look at the academic side. And I get to do that in partnership with a top professor who has all the research framework and the teaching approach. And so we merge my practitioner entrepreneur wild man ways with her very disciplined understanding of the academic side, and it's really like created really interesting things. And then the last part of the component for Schulich, the last piece of the platform, is that then we look at opportunities where we can take all these things we've done and go out and launch interesting events or partnership accelerators for different markets. We've done one in York Region with the Chamber of Commerce in Newmarket, and with Tree Frog, which is a great innovation agency up in Newmarket and York Region. One of the biggest ones we've done is we launched a partnership in the fall of 2020 with the government of India and Startup India. And so we now have it's our second year in this partnership, just this past January, and we had 600 people fully online working together through a venture startup boot camp and competition that's a week long. There were 200 students from Canada supporting 200 student entrepreneurs from India. So the Canadian students, or the Schulich students and the York students, they're supporting through the week the Indian entrepreneurs on how to prepare themselves, doing research for them, going on special assignments, contacting potential clients as the support group. Then we had 100 mentors from India, 100 mentors from Canada, all working through that week, supporting the teams as well. And then different like speakers and trainers and top people from the Schulich training and academic programs coming in to support them. And then and do this whole thing. And we did the whole thing online. And we did it like with like a $0 budget, because there's no event, there's no planes, there's no conference centers, there's no nothing, and really has become a big deal now. In India, we had 1,000 student applications for the 100 team spots that we opened up this year. So we're now taking this platform with Schulich and all these inspired, engaged students and alumni, and we're thinking about places where we can go help. Where can we make an impact? Where we can support different relationships in the world or in the region. During the pandemic, you would have seen that there was the big program. It started off in Toronto, but quickly became national, which was the Digital Main Street Shop Here program that helped all these small businesses on main streets like get online with Shopify and Google and Microsoft and all these different tech platforms. Well, when that was happening, because our mentality is, now that we have this platform, we have this community, we have all these assets to use, where can we apply them to do good work and have a lot of fun in the process? Well, we were the foundational partner for the city of Toronto and Shopify to power up, like, okay, you've got all this tech, who's going to train all these small businesses? Who's actually going to help them to like figure out how to use the tools and effectively do this? Because it's not as, for someone who's been running a traditional business, is not as easy as an e-commerce centric entrepreneur going and like just hacking their way through the tools. So we showed up and we're like, hey, we've recruited 100 students and they're all ready to work in this program. By the way, we'd love to get them paid and get this funded because all the students in that, if you go back to summer 2020, they were all losing their co-op positions and their jobs. And we were able to get 100 paid positions for the Schulich students working on Shop Here, Digital Main Street, helping these businesses, saving people's incomes and legacies of what they had built, and the students getting an incredible experience in the process. So, and I don't know what the next one's going to be. Something else is going to happen next year, and we'll figure out how to take this community and this platform we've applied to go do some amazing work together. So, community and working with our core founders, the students, and how to plug them into the startup space and the venture space, and then finally, how do we take and create really interesting signature platforms or opportunities to do good in the world, because Schulich is built on a history of not just being business for business and pure capitalism. It's based on a triple bottom line, model and ethos that Dean Horvath, our now Dean Emeritus, championed all the way along the path of building the school. And now our new Dean Detlev Zwick, has championed as well too, that we're here to do more than make money. We're here to make an impact with business and help change the world. So yeah, that's what we built, and we put it all together. And it's only been I was doing it part-time and designing it starting at 5 years ago, but I've just been working on it full-time for 3 years, and that's everything that's happened in a 3-year time period, because the heart of it is a community design, which has unleashed all kinds of people helping and working and introducing and unlocking and knowing that it's a collective responsibility and not just me. I'm just the architect and the spark to make it happen, but all these alumni and students are now working on building it all out.
That's fantastic growth, and the program sounds great. You're also a special advisor of entrepreneurship and innovation to the Office of the President of York University. And you mentioned some of the things that York was doing, Y Space and others. Can you tell us some of the great things going on at York to bolster entrepreneurship?
It's been an exciting time as well for York University, and President Lenton has really been a champion of bringing innovation and entrepreneurship to the forefront of what we're doing. Y Space, which is currently led by a gentleman named David Kwok, and a great group of people who have built it over the last couple of years, has not only built out Y Space, which is in downtown Newmarket, downtown Markham, and really set up a lot of help for local community-based entrepreneurs there, but also now has a really successful food incubator that's going in York as well too, and then another program for Black founders and entrepreneurs this year. So a lot of good work, and a real, I think, part of what York is all about, and the people around it have tried to design into things, is there's a layer of support and programming that is definitely focused on the companies that are looking for that big scaling tech future. But there's also a lot of room and support in what we believe is important for the small business community as well too, and the food entrepreneurs, and designing these things into the local community. We're also, you may know, but we're opening a new campus in a couple of years now in Markham, in downtown Markham, that's being built out, and that entire campus will be focused on entrepreneurship, innovation, and experiential education. So the whole design of it, everything that's being put into the space from a design and technology perspective, the programming, the curriculum that's going in there, is very heavily centered around that. And York Region is a significant home to technology companies and technologist labor in the region. It often doesn't get individually identified when we talk about the GTA and Waterloo as that corridor, but it's pretty significant piece of the puzzle. So we're really excited about everything that's growing there. My role with the president in the university is one where what we identified was that with the work that I'm doing at Schulich and with the network that's been established there's this great opportunity for me to advise and support the people who are leading and running innovation at the York level. So if they're they're going for a government funding application on something new, then they've got me always available to come in and give them kind of my thoughts on like how would a non-academic entrepreneur think about this proposal, or if we need to take out a plan that we're doing and run it by some of the leading scale up founders in the city or venture capitalists, then I have the network to rapidly do that. So what we're doing and building at the university level is being like well considered in the context of industry, as opposed to simply being designed. What you want is the best combination of like academic and industry design coming together, as opposed to it being designed without that industry, kind of influence and lens. Yeah, so I'm like the person who gets parachuted and called into all kinds of interesting meetings and opportunities. I also hunt through the community for great partnerships as I'm doing my Schulich work that I think could make a big impact on the wider university or York region level. And then I'm like plugging those in and bringing those to the president's office as opportunities to work on things at a larger level. So yeah, so it's a lot of fun, and I appreciate all the opportunities that President Lenton and the dean have given me to have this like playground and to design freely. And I think the most fun part about what I came into when I arrived at Schulich, just in the beginning, just doing some coaching, guest speaking, and helping out there, was that I realized that there was this like, it was a little bit further behind the rest of the startup ecosystem as it related to the post-secondary institutions. But that made it like really exciting, made it really fun, because I didn't have to go in and think about tearing down someone else's work or critiquing what was being done. I could just think completely freely about, okay, like in consideration of like everything else that's in the ecosystem, what's something we could build that is really unique and different and has a special place in the city and in the country.
It's nice when you have a blank slate and you can make a difference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. And I mean, you can like take it as like it's like one of the people asked me when I went to work at Schulich, then a lot of people who have known the different things I've worked on in my life were like, wow, like you're going to go to an academic space and that's like going to be really different, isn't it? Are you ready for that? Do you think you can like handle that compared to like the speed and innovation at which you're used to working? But for me, life is like a constant series of puzzles, and I get bored really easily in general. So I don't really like sitting around on one project. As you've seen from my LinkedIn profile, I don't like sitting around on one project. So I need a lot of different things to keep me going. And what I really love about the working in the academic space and with all these students is that they just have a million ideas and perspectives and problems they want to solve, and they're pitching things every day. And so every day is a different set of like little micro puzzles and challenges to work on. And I think it's a very interesting, complex challenge to think about how the academic world and how teaching at that level is transforming and what it's going to look like in the years ahead. And I'm just very lucky that the both deans that I've got to work for at Schulich and the associate deans wrapped around them, and also the president, President Lenton, are super open-minded and ready to listen to what the future could be and how we could design new and creative things. So it's in a lot of ways, these institutions are established and entrenched and slower moving, but also there's a lot of will and there's a lot of care to do great things for the students. So that's what I'm plugging into, is like a new puzzle I've never got to do before, and like learning these interesting things in terms of what makes it go and what makes people jump on board and want to rally around stuff. So yeah, it's been a ton of fun. Working on this is a different type of challenge in life.
So let's switch to the investor side of things. You're a founding investor and a special advisor to Barry Hillier. I know him, the CEO of Equo. Tell us about the project and why you decided to back them.
Yeah, Barry's a very first and foremost, like you hear a lot of investors talk about the importance of the people that they're going to get behind and that they're going to back on a lot of levels. And sometimes that's about like because they have like a key insight or there's a drive in them. And And Barry has those things, but also sometimes there's just a person who is like so sincere and heartfelt in terms of what they want to do that you want to help them change part of the world. And Barry is very much like that. He has built many different businesses, from tech companies to agencies, and his coffee company and all these different things that he's involved in. And he's a very selfless, giving gentleman who is like coaches a lot of people. And over the years, when I was younger and starting out and I met him and he was building his company, he had no shortage of time to like give me his thoughts and advice on what I was building back within data. So, as he's proposed with Equo, creating this national community and platform to support small businesses and, underrepresented and underestimated entrepreneurs in a variety of ways that don't plug naturally into the big scaling venture capital system. I really believe in his his passion and his sincerity to help these people. And I see him doing it on a micro level along the way of all these entrepreneurs he's meeting with. But I see his desire to like find a way to do that at a larger scale. And at its heart, if you think about all the companies that have been, fundamental parts of building the country and building the city and underpin key parts of our economy, are not just big tech scaling unicorn companies. Now, those are amazing. Like, I'm not like a small business champion, anti big unicorn venture scaling company guy. That's not me at all, because I invest in companies that I'm looking for to grow and become those things and become real, anchor, cornerstone pieces of the ecosystem. But I also have a ton of respect for all the people that I've met in my life that are building, their 10, $15 million business and don't have any particular desire to, hand it over to investors and put it on a path to sale. And they want to keep it and they want to grow it and they want to take care of the people who work for them. It may be like a family business that is going to be transitioned. And the narrative in the country over time has become so skewed towards everything is about scale and going global and like being, all about how big can we get, which is good because a lot of times, we've like undershot as like a business community of being satisfied to, you know, only go to a certain size and then check out on the business. So yes, I appreciate all of that ambition and all that drive to be big. But what I feel like is a lot of the narrative for entrepreneurs and for the financial community is so skewed on finding those companies that where's the support coming for the rest of the business community and these small businesses or for companies that are at earlier stage. Like, for example, I talk about this story quite a bit, but we have a Schulich company that's called Blade Filters. And this company has two Schulich undergrads just graduated 2 years ago, and a Ryerson chemical engineer student that's a brother of one of the Schulich, young Schulich grads. And they've created a company that has gone out and designed a whole series of technologies in air filtration. And this became a really opportune moment in time in the pandemic when air quality was super important. And they were able to land a number of key contracts. Now, they had a contract in hand, which was like from like a client that would be considered like a gold standard in terms of will never fail to pay client, right? The best quality of contract you could get. And it was for like, many, many millions of dollars. And this is a moment of like incredible triumph and success that these like young guys have got this contract and they're in the right spot. They've made all the right moves and they've got everything lined up to fulfill this contract. But damn it, do you think one of the banks would actually support them from like, from a capital perspective? No. And I literally sat on a phone call where one of the banks said, right, and I'm going to paraphrase, but this is pretty close to like exactly what they said. The thing is, guys, is that, at this stage, you're just going to have to go and get some really expensive, high risk capital because you're young. You've never built a company before. and you just don't have the financial statements to back up going with this to show that you can pay this off even while they're sitting with this like mint contract in hand. But the way it works, guys, is that you go away and it's going to cost you like 18% or whatever to like get this money. But once you do that and you can show to pay it down, then come back to us and all the banks will roll out the red carpet and we'll fight over you to take you in. Well, thanks, but we need help now. Right? So this is like, in their case, it's like being called directly in their face that their youth is the issue. Well, guess what? This company did $26 million in sales this year, right? So they found their way through it. But a big part of how they powered their way through those moments was because they had the Schulich network behind them. And there were alumni who stepped in and not only invested, but also opened doors to further investors. And it did cost more than going the way they should have been backed up by the banks. But it did cost more. But with that support and with that help, they were able to get to the point where they're a $26 million company and their forecast for next year is dramatically higher than that. And this is like only three or 4 years in, but they're not a venture, investable type, company in the traditional sense of like a SaaS platform. They're in the manufacturing space. And so the level of like interest or anyone wanting to help them is just like, was next to null. Now, there are like thousands and thousands of examples of this happening all across the country at the same time. And these types of businesses are not getting the support they need. So what I really love about what Barry has designed in Equo and why I invested in them and got behind them is that they've designed a platform that is, aggregating all of the alternative lending groups and also going to, in time, create this as a clear category of opportunity to draw the banks in more directly and to get some commitments from them, over time would be my aspiration of what would happen. And then also open networks of support to these founders that replicate that micro example of what happened from the Schulich alumni, right? So people have challenges, have needs, and they can be sharing this within the community and rallying people behind them to open doors for them and to help them out. So I'm excited about that. And I'm excited about that also as an opportunity for investors to find, alternative investment opportunities that aren't necessarily sitting inside the tech accelerators right now.
Yeah, they're trying to do a lot of what we do at Toronto Starts, but doing it in a platform versus our real-time events. I talked to them early on. It's a great work what they're doing. And I completely support what you're saying about early stage entrepreneurs. And a lot of people we work with in the community are very early stage, and or they are looking to build a $1 or $2 or $3 million company, like you say. And I help everybody who's trying to build a company, and that's what we do. It doesn't matter to me, because it matters to the person who's building the company. It's their passion,
Yeah.
it's their drive, and it's their future. So we have a microcosm of what you do at Schulich here, where though it's not alumni, it's whatever, it's people who have committed the time and come to our events and stuff. And you mentioned Blade Filters. I've met a couple of them. They've come out and pitched at our startup drink event. So I'm going to reach out to them and see if I can get them on to talk about this story of getting through COVID, because I think it's an interesting story. And it's just, I love working with entrepreneurs. Like you said, it's fantastic. We don't have a lot of time, so I'm going to jump through a couple of quick questions here. What is the stage you invest in, the average size of your investments?
For myself, I'm looking for, companies that are in the, kind of pre-seed seed stage. And I'm looking for opportunities where there's a strong collective group of investors that are getting behind the company at the same time. So I'm not looking for solo investments early stage or to be the lead loan angel going in. I also have a kind of like a weighting towards people that are in the Schulich ecosystem as well too. And it's a great opportunity as well to watch them and see how they behave, communicate, operate, keep their promises, all that kind of stuff. So I've had some great opportunities through that. But I'm also look at external opportunities as well. And some of them are land through Schulich, some of them land through network. Some of them have been some of my one of my most successful investments that I made in the last number of years was a former employee from Thin Data who had a concept that they wanted to get done. And I really believed in them because of how they operated, and I saw how they worked at the company. So I got behind them and invested in them there, and that became something that was really significant. And then also, I've started to get more involved in serving as a venture partner in some different places right now. Antler Canada launched just this past. Well, it's in its current first cohort right now. It's a massive multiple $100 million global fund as Antler Global, and they work on the inception stage. Company. So it's even like people that are just super talented, want to be entrepreneurs, have a category of expertise. They'll bring like 70, 100 of them into like a group program, and then they form teams around concepts that either some people brought in or some of the concepts that emerged around just general problems that they wanted to solve when they come in. And it's been super successful around the world. So one of my friends, Naaman Badeo, who is the co-founder, or the founder, I should say, of flightnetwork.com, and which he sold about 18 months or so ago now. He launched Antler Canada along with Bernie Lee and the venture capital leader. And so I've been working with them and seeing a lot of interesting early stage companies through there, and certainly looking to do more of that work, getting more involved on the venture partner side as well. So a variety of places that the deals come from. And generally my investment would be, again, as I said, I'm like a contributor. So what I look for is like, where can I make a $50,000 investment, but where do I know I'm going to be able to make significant impact in terms of two things? One, what does my network unlock? Because it's fairly interesting and substantial over the last 25 years of working in the space. And number two is, I really look for the coachability of the founder. Like, if you ask me, what's your number one lesson you've learned in terms of like people you've invested in where your money's all gone to ashes now, and people you've invested in where they returned it like 50 times over? Coachability. And not because they have to listen to me. I don't want them to over index and listening to me over to anyone else. But the coachability factor, I've seen a direct translation to how they listen to their customers, how they listen to their co-founders, how they listen to their staff, how they listen to the market and what it's telling them. And so this is the number one thing that I've found in terms of looking for now. So I look for, can I find the person who is coachable? Because my role that I attempt to play in the investor base is, come to me with your biggest, most challenging moments where you're trying to understand if you can marshal the will to follow through with what's in your gut, or if your gut is sending you down the wrong path. And we're going to have like really incredible conversations based on the fact that now over 25 years and all these companies I've been involved in, invested in, run, succeeded, blown up, sideways, like everything that happened, I've been a part of like so many scenarios. So if somebody comes to me now and says, hey, like, I'm thinking about taking on one of my biggest clients as an investor, and they've got like a couple $1 million to put in the business, right? Well, I'm not just talking about theory. I've done that, right? And I lived it, and I can tell them the inner workings of what that looks like. So the founders who take me into their group find that, when they're dealing with the larger investor group and all their key decisions are going to the board, that I'm a great place to come and have some deep, soulful, conversations about what big decision they're about to make. And I like being able to make that impact. So I'm looking for that ability to have that dialogue as well as the investment as well too.
What's a red flag for you when a startup is pitching or negotiating?
There's a lot of them that are like super simple, like, when anyone shows up leading with like rampant paranoia about their idea and NDAing me and all that kind of stuff. And that's a complete, instantaneous turn off. And I always tell people, like, I guarantee you that there's like, there's already 100 people with $2 million raised and with a 3-year head start doing the exact same thing that you're about to show me right now. So now what are we going to do about it? Right. Because it's like there's rare situations where things are like so, new and transformational, but most of the time. People still a lot of the time have not really hunted down what is the true competition or parallel competition that's out there, and they don't come prepared to be able to like really talk about that up front. I'm not interested in like I've got something that no one else has. I figure everyone, there's going to be a bunch of people that have it even after you launch it pretty quickly, all nipping at you. And like, so I'm interested in what the strategy is and what the approach is that's going to allow us to like build and execute better. And then I would say just I mentioned to you the coachability factor. So still a lot of people come in seeking advice, right? And advice is the gateway to investment often. And they come in seeking advice, but then they just want to argue with you and tell you why they're right and why your advice is out to lunch kind of thing, right? Which sure, half the time it will be, but how they have that conversation is the red flag. It's not that they may have, they can and should have different opinions than me. We should be able to debate them, but it's the how, it's the tone, it's the nature, it's the words. Because I can take all that and project it into every board meeting, every investor meeting, every client session, every media call that they're ever going to have. And I know the damage and the destruction caused by those kinds of attitudes and approaches to life. So that's a big red flag.
This has been a great conversation. Where can people go and find out more?
Yeah, if you want to follow me, you can look for me on Twitter at CW Carter. And my Carter, as you can see here, is spelled with a D in the last name. So you got to make sure you get that. I live and love, LinkedIn to death. If you come over to Schulich Startups with the plural, Schulich Startups on Instagram, that's where we announce all of our events and sessions. And, I mentioned that this was a lot of we're focused on the Schulich founder, but all our events and all of our community sessions are wide open. So anybody who wants to come, we have people coming from all over the world, people from different communities and different universities who want to hang out and learn alongside us. That's all cool too. So those are some of the places that you can find me.
Fantastic. I really appreciate you taking the time to be on Startup Talk.
Thanks for having me. I had a lot of fun. You have a great platform going, and look forward to continuing to watch your work. And honestly, I've been waiting for my turn, so I finally got it. Thank you, and I'll keep following what you're working on and catch up with you at some events.